So I know I'm not behind bars and I know I'm not locked up right now, but I'm still very much incarcerated.
Brian Keith Banks, born July 24th, 1985. Brian Banks, like every young athlete, had dreams of one day becoming a professional football player in the NFL. He was well on his way all the way up to the summer after his junior year, having already committed to the top college program in the country, USC. But then he was falsely accused by his high school schoolmate and charged with a sexual assault that never happened. It's an age-old story that, although not talked about enough, happened and happens a lot more than you think. On one side, usually the male athlete, not only does he lose the precious time an athlete has to make something of his physical gifts, but an entire generational lineage is changed forever. That leaves grave implications for that athlete's offspring and possibly down the line not getting the head start in life they could have because one person decided to use a broken societal system to their advantage. One that says you're innocent until proven guilty in that situation, but places far too many young men in a position their innocence is doubted from the start, and in some cases doesn't matter unless a miracle happens that shows the innocence is obvious. On the other side, you have, who's usually a female, use the power of her weakness as a female and the tendency to be believed in these situations behind tears and a broken appearance that wipes away behind closed doors into celebration that the plan of getting forward in life financially is working. In this case specifically, the two sides have names. Brian Banks, the accused, 16 at the time, and Wanetta Gibson, his accuser, 15, along with her mother, Wanda Rhodes, who basically quarterbacked this entire scheme as a way to get rich. And she did, relative to the life she had before, of course, awarded $1.5 million after she sued Long Beach Polytech High School for an unsafe environment that allowed her daughter to be assaulted by a much stronger male football star. The headlines alone carried this case like a movie playing out in real life, except for Brian Banks, not one thing about it was entertaining. Because of the advice his public defender gave him, he decided to take a plea deal instead of facing trial and being given 41 years in prison. That plea cost him the rest of his life instead. According to reports, the plea understood by Banks was that he wouldn't serve jail time, just probation, and could continue his life, whatever would be left of it. But he was shocked when the judge at sentencing said the words 6 years in prison. He'd served more than 5 years incarcerated and another 5 on probation before his conviction was overturned in 2012 after Gibson on a hidden camera admitted her entire story and accusation was false. But the damage was done, and for the most part, Brian Banks' growth as a football player was stunted. What happened? Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth. Let's get it. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. Brian Banks was a 6'4" blossoming football star from Long Beach, California, already a standout for Long Beach Polytech High School as a linebacker who had just finished his junior year, committing to USC and doing everything he needed to be ready for the journey ahead as an athlete, a road that almost certainly led to the NFL. That included attending summer school in 2002. On July 8th, weeks before he turned 17, he asked to leave the class to use the telephone when he ran into Wanetta Gibson, who was also taking a leave to use the restroom at the same time. The two wandered off to a secluded area of the school known as a popular makeout area near the staircases and engaged. They returned to their classes where Gibson passed her friend a note that said she had just been assaulted. Word got to her sister, and while walking home from school, she's prodded and continues to say Brian stole her virginity without consent as she didn't want to get in trouble with her mother when she got home. They went back to school and reported the false incident, and when her mother was informed, the plot to capitalize from the situation began, ending Banks' chances of playing college football as he was immediately expelled from school. The next 10 years would be just enough to have his dream fade away. Stunt number 1, a lapse of judgment. Keep in mind, Brian Banks was a 16-year-old kid at the time he accompanied Wanetta Gibson to the makeout spot. But when it comes to a decision this serious, age doesn't always matter or help the accused. In the end, a lack of guidance and poor judgment by the wrong two people caused a domino effect that ruined two families. The right guidance or lack thereof, I've learned, is an important element in solving the equation of making the top professional leagues. There's so many weeding out processes that naturally happen, from injury to bad grades, poor work ethic, immaturity, etc., and honestly have to happen to make room for all the players that's attempting to make professional sports a career with only so many jobs available. Some athletes have strong parents or parent in their lives that's in some way been through parts of the journey before, understand what it takes to pursue a desired career, or the athlete has heard all the right stories of what can happen when you lose focus from somewhere that helps them understand what they're to face ahead. But so many times, said athlete is missing the element of the right guidance and ends up in a situation like Brian Banks. At 16, most boys are excited for their first experiences with a girl, and a star athlete is no different. Except for him, he's vulnerable because of who he is and how much money can be made off his name if a false accusation this serious is successful. Brian Banks was caught in the right mixture of the wrong people. A star athlete, young female afraid of the consequences, a mother looking for a chance to financially capitalize, and sex. Not to mention a system of public defenders with no moral or emotional connection to their cases. A lack of judgment brought these elements together and it changed Brian Banks' life forever. Stunt number 2, missing prime years. As a result of being falsely accused, Brian was arrested at his parents' home in Artesia, California, charged with 2 counts of forcible rape and 1 count of sodomy with a special circumstance of kidnapping. He was told he faced 41 years in prison if he went to trial and lost, meaning pretty much the rest of his life as he hoped it to be behind bars. Banks accepted the prosecutor's plea deal that he understood to mean no jail time and only probation. He pleaded no contest July 8, 2003 and was crushed when he was sentenced to 6 years in prison. Hearing 6 years as an athlete about to go to college for 4 years at USC, meeting and making possible lifelong friends and competing against some of the best competition is, I'm sure, a life flash of all the hard work you put in to be in that position, followed by the thought of disappointingly losing it all while you know you're being falsely accused. Along with the 6-year sentence, Banks was ordered to file as a sex offender when he's released and placed in an ankle monitor for 5 more years of his life. So even though not behind bars, he was still locked up. Physically, we as humans enjoy a very short time as peak athletes. You hope to make enough money in that time for your abilities to help support your family and make a difference in whatever community you're a part of. But going to prison, missing out on the right foods, training, highlight videos, not to mention the mental stress and your body changing to acclimate to its surroundings, takes away who you once were and are supposed to be. Missing that time also took Banks off the NFL radar completely for 10 years. Stunt number 3, lost opportunities. In the meantime, while Brian Banks was serving his 6-year sentence, Wanetta Gibson and her family sued the Long Beach School District for inadequate security and won a settlement of $1.5 million. A neighbor later claimed the family began buying cars, TVs, and material things with the money, reportedly blowing most of it within 5 years. Brian Banks and his new legal team were still working on his appeal, but now had hired a private investigator and got a lucky break when Wanetta Gibson friend requested Brian on Facebook. His team made a plan to use this connection to in some way get her to admit the false accusation on hidden cameras set up at the investigator's office. Wanetta apparently felt she needed to take some responsibility and help clear Brian's name so he could move on with his life. She agreed to come in and eventually was caught on camera admitting to everything being consensual, even though she didn't want to lose the money she got from the settlement. The taped confession was taken to court, and on May 24, 2012, the conviction was overturned, meaning Brian Banks was completely a free man. In 2012, he was then 26 years old, about to turn 27 in a few months, wasn't able to attend college, and had no NFL prospects left. Pete Carroll and a few teams gave him a shot, but in the end, he wasn't the same player and had to settle for an opportunity in the UFL. In April 2013, his NFL dream came true when the Atlanta Falcons signed him to their team, making his debut in preseason for them that year, but was released after 4 preseason games. Understandably, because of the lack of growth opportunities he lost over the previous 10 years. All in all, Brian Banks went through a travesty of an ordeal and still persevered to making the NFL, albeit a few preseason games. Makes you think what he could have done had that bathroom break at 16 never happened. The school district later sued Gibson and her mom, winning a $2.6 million judgment, to which they'll likely never receive, being Wanetta Gibson's whereabouts are unknown. A tale of how an accusation is all it takes to lose your dream, and how important it is to stay focused and not be a part of the weeding out process. Salute to Brian Banks, much respect, but for these reasons, his growth was stunted. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth, and I'm out.